is also an excellent pigeon. We start with the English carrier, but the bird here has this wonderful back. It's got beautiful color. The bird has a neat neck, the eye, the beak, the waddle is very nice. Looks like it might even be a bird with red hen. Never know. But we're here to talk about Jacobins a little bit. I've had Jacobins every day of my life since I was about 14 years old. But I was about 13 when I saw my first pair of Jacobins. And they were in a pen. The president of the Los Angeles Pigeon Club had birds in his backyard, every breed we could think of. But there was a pair of birds there, Jacobins, and I stood in front of the pen for about half an hour because looking at these birds, I fell in love. So I had pigeons for my whole life since I was about 6 years old. But at about 13, I saw my first Jacobins, and I thought, I want to have them. I gotta have some of those. I gotta have some Jacobins. And they were priced at $35 a pair. And for me, an 8-year-old, eighth grader, at about 13 years old, that was so expensive. There was no way in the world I was ever going to be able to afford a pair of Jacobins that cost $35 a pair. That was just out of the question. So for the next 3 or 4 years, I would have to dream about them. And eventually, when I was about 16, I was able to afford the $35 and bought my first pair of red Jacobins, very much like this one. What you have is a beautiful pigeon. And if you guys know any of the history of pigeons, if you look at all of these birds, any of you familiar with Charles Darwin? He wrote a book called On the Origin of Species, which is the history of evolution of mankind, supposedly. He did some other work before that, and he wrote some other books, but Charles Darwin was a scientist, but he raised animals, he raised plants, he had all kinds of things about observing living things and the movement from one form into another. And he would look at finches, he would look at gardenias and geraniums and roses, and then he would look at cattle, he would look at sheep and at goats and pigs and beef and chickens. And then all of a sudden, at one point, he was studying evolution. He thought, well, let me try raising pigeons. I'll get first-hand information about pigeons. And then in his youth, at about 25 or 35 years of age, he fell in love with pigeons, like many of us have. He got this bug, whatever it is, to have this passion for loving these pigeons. And so in the rest of his life, he had these birds, these pigeons, and then he based all of his observations about the histories of evolution and about the scientific observations in that from his work with his pigeons. And as I was sitting here at the table early on, you see the English carrier, the English trumpeter, and the Jacobin, and the pigeons that fly around. Maybe there's some on the roof outside. They all come from the same place, according to Charles Darwin. They are all evolved from the same early form of pigeon. But what you know is, very first ones came and food, and they were basically in the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys in the Middle East. And so pigeons, when man first started growing his own food and stopped chasing it down, pigeons became the first source of food, meal. The pigeons also went out to the grain fields. They would eat grain, and they would come back and they would host themselves in these big things called dovecotes. And they look like big forts out in the fields. But they have anywhere from 3 to 5 to 7,000 pigeons in each one of these pigeon coops. You know, I think I have a lot of pigeons, but boy, those guys had them in 3,000, 5,000 at a time in these, and they were made out of like adobe bricks. And I see, you know, as we were coming on the way in, you had some guys that were making bricks and like in the wooden forms, you know, and taking the dirt from the ground and making bricks out of it, and leaving them in the sun to dry. Well, I'm thinking these buildings were all made out of bricks from the earth. But these pigeons would raise their babies. They would go out in the field, eat the grain, come back, raise their babies, and the men who were watching them would eat the grain and pay for the tributes to the king, whoever it was, and then they would eat the baby pigeons, the squabs, add the grain. And so for now 10,000 years or more, we know that pigeons basically, I'm sure this is on, basically pigeons have been the first domesticated pet for human beings. So we know that the pigeon was domesticated before the dog, the cat, the falcon, the birds, the cows, the sheep. Pigeons were the very first animal. They were a food source, but they were also a source of joy and recreation, because we've been watching them fly for about 10,000 years. You watch the pigeons. At any rate, let's talk about Jacobins for a minute, because Jacobins began here in the Indus Valley years and years and years and years ago. Maybe 2,500 years ago, we have writings about a bird called the rough pigeon, which came with the spices from India, and they traveled around the world to India. But in 2,500 years ago, there are references in some of the old languages, the Aramaic and such, about the travelers that would come into the old world from the new world, and to travel to Europe and to the other continents. But these pigeons basically were raised here, but they started off with this little formation on their head, and they were called the rough pigeon. And they were here in the Indus Valley early on. And from there they went to Great Britain, and Queen Victoria back in the 1800s used to raise them. And if you've ever seen a picture of Queen Victoria, the Queen of England from the early 1800s into the late 1800s, right into 1890, she had pictures of herself with these big clothing things. She had this Victorian collar that she would wear around her neck, and it was based on the fact that she saw Jacobins, she loved them, she raised them, and then she designed her own clothes based on the Jacobin pigeon. And so when you see pictures of Queen Victoria, you see this big, huge Victorian collar, but you know that the reason it was there is because she loved her Jacobins and wanted to look like them. The pigeons in front of me, you have some very, very good ones. These are very excellent birds. And I would just ask for a minute, I'll show you what the parts of the bird are. There's a standard for the Jacobins that includes 100 points. And so you have 100 points on the Jacobin standard, and I'll show you what those parts are. There are 20 points for the hood and top, which is this part of the bird. See on this right here? This is the crest on the bird. If you have an Almamater or an English trumpet or something, this is the crest right here. And the interior crest needs to be even, like all of the other birds that have a crest. But you can see this bird on the inside of this big hood formation. There's this little crest that comes around, starts behind the right eye, comes all the way around behind the head, and then finishes off under the ear on the left-hand side. Do you see? It has a crest. I'll hold it here. Let me hold the beak, and maybe you can just push the hood and top back. Oh, you're very good. I like this man. He's a great assistant. He's better than I am, by the way. But if you look at this bird, I'm just going to hold his beak, but right here is the crest. And you can see in the middle of the crest it has what are called spikes that go back into here. They also have like feathers around the eye that will go through like the ear horn. These are feathers over in here. Once in a while, the feathers around the eye will get in the eye itself. And you can just take little tiny scissors, the cuticle scissors, and just trim these little feathers away so that they don't stick in the bird's eye. See the little feathers here? They're sticking right in the eye. You can either move them around, or you can just cut them off. Just cut them off. Little tiny, just keep them from the vertigo, because the feathers are growing right in their eye. But this crest needs to be even on. But this and the feather up behind the crest, and all of this is called a hood. This is the hood. Now the whole formation thing, people say, oh no, the Jacobin hood, that means the whole thing. No, no, no. The hood is just this part, just here. The hood is the hood over the head. And then the top feather is this feather that comes up above the head. So you have the hood and the top, which is here, this is the hood, and top is this part. So the fuller and the higher you can build this, 100. So it's like 1/5 of the Jacobin points are right here. 1/5 of the points on a Jacobin are right here. So you have hood and top. And knowing after years and years and years of this is a pretty good bird, but I would say if I had wishes, I would fill this more and I would make it a little higher. You saw a bird at the show. There was a blue checkered hen. I don't know if the person had it here, but there was the best hen at the show was a blue checker hen, and she had the most perfect hood setting. She had the hood that was clear over the eyes, and then it filled up over the head beautifully. For that feature, she was really, really good.
So whoever had that blue checker hen, but the hood setting was just like this, and then it was built up over the head. It was beautiful, hard, and smooth, and very, very nice. Now the yellow is pretty good, but it's not as good as that blue checker hen was. But the yellow has features that the blue checker did not have. So now the second part of the Jacobin that gives another 20 points is this part right here. This is called the chain. The chain, and now the point I want to make before I go much further is a Jacobin is a three-dimensional pigeon. You see a lot of times you just see the side view, and guys want to look at the picture of the Jacobin from the side. You can't do it that way. You've got to look at the bird from every direction. The Jacobin, if you look at it from the top, you look at it from the side and the front and the bottom, you have to move the bird around to see what's going on. So you really do have to do an exercise in 3-dimension. So he's holding the bird like this, and then he's going to turn it around, and then he's going to look at the top, and then he might look at the front. And so you get a sense of the bird from every direction. Don't just no side view only, because there's so much other stuff involved. But here, if you have the chain, you want the chain to fit at the bottom, and then you want it to go up like this without any breaks, and then you want it to go up and over and meet the hood and top. So here's the upper chain where it meets the hood and top. Right here, sometimes you have a bird that has a fault, and it'll have a break. This one has a slight break here where the chain meets the hood and top. And the reason that's there is that there's an ear horn going through here, right off of the head. And it'll push one part out, and so you have one layer like this and one layer like this. This is, this is called a shingle. A shingle. Don't want that. You want the whole thing to be one solid, just like this. This side is good. One solid line all the way down with no breaks. No breaks. It meets at the bottom, and you see how the feather rolls slightly? See, this is nice, like it rolls over. Some pigeons will have feather that's really flat, so the feather fits on the bird flat. You don't want that. You want the feather to come out and then roll slightly. And that's what this one does. This has a nice fit, and it rolls slightly in here. So the chain starts at the bottom, it comes up to here, and then meets right here at the hood and top. So right here, chain is this part, stops at the bottom. You want that to be the shortest part, and you want it to come out here, extend way out in front, and then come back up here and meet the upper top here, and so that this whole thing sweeps all the way around and cuts in at the lower part of the chain. In the back part now, if we hold the bird upright, this part here, on the back side, this is called the mane, M-A-N-E. Same feature on every breed of bird I know, I think. You all have English trumpeters, they have a mane. So the crest is up here, and the stuff that comes behind it then is called the mane, M-A-N-E. And you want this to be full and thick as well. Oftentimes birds will have trouble here. They have a thin spot, or the feathers are crooked, or the mane goes down the side, or goes that way. But this bird, pretty good feather quality, but the mane is right in the middle. It comes down, it's pretty thick, but I would like it even thicker like it is up on the front and top. There's another bird there in the group I'm going to bring out and show you for feather quality. But this bird is a good sample. This is worth 15 points. So this part is worth 20. This part is worth 20. This part is worth 15. Now there are two more features on the Jacobin that are worth 15 points, and I'll show you what they are. Thank you. I'm going to open the bird's wing, but the depth and the quality of the color is worth 15 points. So you see this bird, it's got beautiful, nice, dark, rich yellow color. Did I see a dun feather in there? No. All right. But you see this bird has nice, beautiful yellow color, and the color is pretty good clear down into the hawk feathers. See the nice yellow color comes all the way through? The bird gets 15 points for that color, whatever the quality of the color is. So the bird stands on my hand, you get those tall, look at those nice legs on this bird. But see the tall, showy bird, he gets up to show it all off. Well, there's 15 points for how the bird presents itself. So how it presents itself is 15 points. There's another 5 points for the body. And you'd like to have the body kind of slim and the wings a little slim, and how the bird presents itself. So you can think about body and station together is worth another 20 points. So that's 20 for the front, 20 for the hood and top, and 20 for how the bird presents itself, 15 for the mane, and 15 for the color. Now there's what, 10 points left? guess what? There's 7 points for how the bird is marked. You want to have at least 5 white flight feathers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I have at least 5, I'm good. All right? This one has 7. So it's got 7. That's very good. Perfect would be 10. So 7, 8, 9, 10. You had all the white flight feathers? Perfect, right? The tail needs to be white as well. Pure white in the tail. And the other thing is the bird needs to have a head that's white. So you want the white on the head, and a perfect one has the color up underneath the eye, and this one has perfect color markings, by the way. But you want the yellow to stop under the eye, and this one is perfect for that. Look at this. So the top of the head down to the eye is white, and then down below that is in color. But now there's only 7 points for that, so what's the most important thing on this Jacobin? You got 20 points for this, 20 points for that, 15 for this, 15 for color, 15 for station. When I got 7 points for markings, so are markings as important as other stuff on the bird? When I'm judging, no, they're not. They're not as important. Most important is this. Second most important is this. Third is main and color equal. Show is very important, but it's only 15 points, 20 if you count the body. Now there are 3 points left, 7 points for markings. On the Jacobin standard, they give 3 points for the eyes. And so you can have 2 eyes, one on either side of the head. My mentor, Paul McNorgan, used to say, Jacobin standard should give eyes. If they're going to give points for eyes, they should eyes, 2, one on either side of the head. And I used to laugh at him. He says, well, you have a good Jacobin, you can't see the eyes. What's the point of giving them points for eyes? It doesn't matter. But if you look at this, and I'm right down to it, and if I have birds that are right close to each other and perfect and exactly the same, I have a bird here with the right side. Has it got an orange eye? Can you see the orange eye? I'm going to turn around. Watch. Just watch what happens to me. Look at the eye on this. That's what we call a bull eye. See, this bird is a perfect example. That eye is dark. See that dark eye? Well, that's worth 1 point out of 100. So how involved am I with that? I don't really care. 1 point out of 100? I mean, if a bird comes to me and it's got this beautiful chain and wonderful top and hood setting and the color is good and the bird stands and shows, that eye is meaningless to me. 1 point is not going to make a champion out of this pigeon. 20 points here is going to make a champion. 20 points here, that is a champion. 1 point for the eye? Come on. It's like, who are you kidding? Fair enough? But so here's this pigeon, and it's a very good pigeon. So for station and the color and the markings need to come clear down here into the hawk feathers. You'll see a lot of Jacobins that go white on the belly and into here. That's a point or 2 when you get it. It's not as important. It's a finishing touch. So the color down into here is a finishing touch. The eyes are a finishing touch. The major, most important things are hood and top and chain and mane and color and station. Pay attention to those first. Then get them marked right and then worry about the eyes last. Don't worry about the other stuff. Fair enough? But nice bird. Very good pigeon. I don't know who owns this bird, but it's a very good one, by the way. It's a terrific bird. Let me get one that has better feather quality than this one. I'll show you the difference. Take one feather, and I'm going to put my finger behind it, and I just want you to look at the construction of the individual feather. I'm going to take this bird, and I'm going to put my finger behind this feather. All right, look at this feather. Do you see how the feather, the body down clear where my finger is? You see the bird has feather, the quills come together, and it kind of starts to break up about here, and then it runs out. But see the nice shine on the feather? See the green sheen on that feather? That's the oil from the lanolin on the bird. This bird has oil on his feathers like a duck. They have an oil gland here. Have you ever picked the bird apart and you find the little bump on the back side of it? they have lanolin, then that makes lanolin. And then when the bird preens itself, every time it sticks its beak into there, and then it gets lanolin on its beak, and then it preens every feather. So it takes the oil from here, and it puts it on every feather that it can get to. So when you see the shine on the feather, what that is the oil produced by the oil gland. Now this is really neat because you have all this beautiful green. But what I want to do is just put my finger behind one feather here. But look at how nicely put together this feather is. See this feather? Here's a better one yet. See, this feather is in the hood formation. So okay if I pull one? Can you hold that bird? I'm going to pull one from here off of this guy, and I'm going to show you the difference. Can you tell the difference between the body of those two feathers? See how much closer? This was like it was pulled off of the wing. And this one, you see how the feather breaks up here? So it starts breaking up lower, further onto the bird. Can you see the difference of those two feathers? They came from the same place on the two different birds. I mean, I pulled it right out of here on the yellow, and I pulled it right out of there on the kite, on the black. Same feather. Which one has the better feather quality? This one, right? Can you see it?
Yes.
And you can see it on the bird, the shine of the feather. This is okay, but this is better. This is really good. So this is okay, and this is like, all right. That's kind of neat. So when you just, construction, this one's not as long. See, this one's shorter feather, but that's okay because the feather quality is so much better. It really is. And when you're breeding your birds, you want the feather quality and the fit of the feather. See the nice chain? Start here. This one has a nice chain as well, but the feather is rougher. A smoother feather is preferred. But this one, that's a great bird. You're not getting rid of this bird because it's got other features. It lays the feather on really nice. But this one, definitely don't get rid of this one. This one's got all this great feather quality, and you want all your birds to have this kind of feather quality with that kind of shape. And so the mix is trying to put all these characters on the same pigeon. Fair enough? Do you guys have some questions you want to ask me about any of this? Ask away. You've got an expert here that came all the way from California just to come and see you. All right? Ask away. Let's do it. Let's look at this one. See, now the red has smoother feather than the yellow. You got them in your hands. Bring them out here. Come on.
Okay.
Okay, we're done with those. Okay, I just want to see. Want to take those? Just hold on to this way. And you look at the feathers. Now, all I've done is I'm down into molecular structure kind of here. But now look at this bird. This bird's feather is a little flatter. See how the feathers go out flat and they don't curve around as much? The bird's, it's okay. It's just that this particular bird is a more flat bird. But look at the nice hood setting. Look at the hood setting here. See the hood with the crest behind the head? Look at how nice that is on this bird. It got a little bit of color on the head, but look at the crest. Look at how nice that is. It's perfectly even. See? Perfectly even. Now, what? You notice anything else on this bird? I got it in my hands. What am I looking at? Did I notice that this bird has some color on its head? It's not marked perfectly, but look at the hood setting. What's more important here? The hood setting. I'm disregarding the points on the head. That's what, 7 points? And maybe it's got white flights and white tail, and it's missing a few feathers on the head in color. Well, it's okay. I got to take that into consideration, yes. But goodness me, the bird has to beat the bird on hood setting first before I start docking this one points on head color markings, all right? But look at the beautiful setting of the hood. Now the hood, again, is that crest inside the whole formation. It's not the whole feather formation. It's just the crest behind the head. And so as we're looking at this bird, now the other thing is, let me pull a feather on this bird. I've got to feel the beak. This is a nice pigeon, by the way. Yeah, some very good birds here. This is nice. I wish I had started with birds of this quality. Now I'm going to pull one feather. Do you still have the feather from the kite? Compare it to this one. You still have those two feathers? Put that one in the mix and look at them now. Which one is the best feather now? Which one is the best feather? Can you see any difference there? This is now the touchy stuff. This is little minutia. This is where the guy raising them for 50 years is standing in front of you and go, all right, let me tell you what, okay? Now look at this one. Look at how nice this feather is all the way clear out to here. It's even better than the kite. So what do we know about this bird? It has a real strong hood setting, and it's got real nice feather quality, but I want the feather to be a little bit more curved and curled, not quite so flat. So, even better to make this bird improve it, I clean up the color on the head, but boy, this is a great pigeon. Now, if you would have made this pigeon, we had a yellow one over here that had not as good a feather quality. What do you think would happen if you made that yellow with all the great outline and the great lay and the great rows, and you made it to this bird with real good feather quality? That's a good mating. That's a good mating. A good mating. I missed one thing when we talked about the hood formation, and there aren't any points for the rose, but without it, there's no Jacobin. The rose is this part right here in the center from which all of the feathers radiate. They go up, they go back, they go forward, and they go down. That part right here that goes down is called the tippet. The tippet. It looks like a piece of pie. Point to here and goes wide. But you want the feathers to lay from the center of the rose. They have to go down, they have to go back, they have to go up, and they have to go forward. And below the eye is in color. But here's a bird with a very nice rose. See how the rose is here? It's full of pin feathers right now, but look at the nice shape of the rose. There are no creases, there are no lines anywhere. So it lays the feather on exactly right, up, down, around, and forward like the flower. The name of the flower is the rose. So rose like a carnation or chrysanthemum or other flower that is round, that lays the petals on like this. That's exactly the way you want it to. But see how beautiful, nice and shiny the feather is? Good hood setting. See? Look at this, the one interior. But you have to look at the Jacobins up close to see this part. You don't know. You're sitting back 20 feet away and you see the judge up in front of you and you say, why do you do that? What are you looking at? But the judge can see this part and you can't. But what is this part worth? You got 20 points here. This is the most important part of the bird. And you can't really see it from the audience back there, but the judge is making points here like, whoa, really good hood setting, crooked hood, something else is a problem. Yes. Then it might go down. You think, boy, that bird looks great from the side.
If we speak,
go ahead and talk. You talk about the feather quality of this bird and the fit. Look at how nice the feather rolls around and beautifully fit.
And also, the point what is saying now about judge when he catching the bird, he's facing this side and he's looking for this part. When we're getting here 20 point and here's 20 point, we're looking for this. But normally in Jacobin we see in the side. All we're looking for the side and the main is showing, but more counting point is in this part in Jacobin. But the more important also standing in the pigeon. If he's standing very good and he have a nice feathers, and this pigeon is still molting, but he have a nice feather, and you will see the change. How is it? Stop. It's very good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect. And see how nice this fits around it. See how nice this birds fit the feather around the head? It's like there's a little hole here, but there's feather up, out, and around. The head is buried in the feather. This is just a baby. This is really good. But see how the feather comes out, rolls around. It's real shiny too. Nice and hard feather. Nice and good, well fit. My point is, if you have a bird that has great big feathers, sometimes the big feather brings problems. You bring birds that the feather quality is no good, or the feather gets droopy, or the feather falls apart, or just furry like this. It's just like a great big old mop. You don't want that. You want the feather to be good, and you want it to fit right. And then once you get it to fit right and a good feather quality, then you make it bigger. Big is nothing unless it has the fit and the shine and the feather quality. Big is not important until you get it right. So get it thick feather, hard feather, fit right, nice bowing, and then make it bigger. Do not make it big because everything else falls apart and it's useless. Stay with the fit and the feather and then build it bigger. Do not think big is better. It's not. Big is not automatically better. It's not.
The important thing is in Jacobin. Youth.
You got this.
Yes, yesterday we are talking and we speak about what the important things in Jacobin. And he asked, you asked some your friend, I think.
Yep.
Yes, and he told him the important thing, the first thing is the leg. He told him three things is very important.
Legs.
The first thing is leg, second thing is his leg, third thing is leg.
Right.
Leg standing in the bird is very, very important.
Gotta show.
Yes. And how you getting the balance of this pigeon? You start from the leg and the standing of the pigeon. If he's stretching, he will lose the balance in the top and also down of the bird. And then you not see it's what we counting now here, the good part up of the pigeon, and the straight pigeon.
Very much so.
Can you ask me some more questions?
You go right ahead. You go ahead. Zuhair, you're the man. You've been doing this for years. What questions do you think we could answer that we haven't asked yet?
Interesting to see to me.
Go ahead, Bob.
I got one. What do you recommend for them to do with the Jacobins raise their own babies? Or should they be pumped to get more numbers?
Well, that's a great question, and then there are people that will tell you one way is correct, and others will tell you the other way is correct. You trim the birds. I have people that tell me don't trim the birds. I have others that say trim them all the time. As far as having them raise their own babies, mine raise their own babies until I find out they can't do it very well. And then I will give foster the babies out, but then those birds do not stay with me very long. My friend Paul McNorgan, who was my mentor with Jacobins, says one of the things you select for is birds that will breed. Listen to that for a second. One of the things you select for in your pigeons is to select for birds that will breed. And so when I'm selecting my pigeons, that pair that raises 10 babies, they're going to stick around. They're going to be there next year. That pair that didn't have anything this year, and I might give them a second year to try again, and switch the matings, and you still have trouble, they're not around anymore. The ones that breed are the ones that stay with me. So that breeding part, one of the things in my own experience is I will keep birds that will raise their own babies. I will also keep some foster parents that will raise babies in addition. So the difference is you may have 10 parrot pigeons, I have 40 Jacobin pairs. Zuhair has 40, 50 parrot Jacobins, and you raise 50 babies, 100? Okay, I will raise 200 baby Jacobins a year out of 20 to 40 pair. But I have project birds as well, so that's not really fair. But the idea, and Bob's question is, do you use foster parents or do you let the birds raise their own? I try to let them raise their own, and if I figure out after a while that they're not doing very well at it, then I will steal their eggs and let the homers raise them. But I will make sure that those birds get to raise a baby or two. They'll raise a homer, or they'll raise another bird. And when I figure out that they're not doing it, they can't do it very well, they leave their eggs, or they abandon the babies, or they don't feel, those pairs don't stay with me. They go away, they disappear. And so I select for pigeons that are going to raise their own young. And it's one of those 10 or 12 things. When I'm looking for pairs of Jacobins, my advantage is that I have so many that I have some pretty good ones. And out of the pretty good ones, I keep the best ones that also feed their babies. And so I have good Jacobins, and I have good Jacobins that will feed their babies. And so you may only have a few pair, and you find out that you have 5 pair, and all 5 pair, that's like really hard to raise the babies. Well, let's keep the ones that raise later. Maybe you'll have a good experience. Farm them out, feed the birds that do feed well, get some pioneers or some utility kings or some rollers or some homers that are good parents, and then try to raise some more babies. But, keep the birds that raise their babies. Keep them. That's one of the features you need to have. They need to raise their birds. And then they need to raise good ones. I'm sorry. This is the 50 years here. We could have a 2-minute seminar, but I am 72 years old. I have had pigeons every day of my life. Stuff today from my friend Nasser. I have learned stuff today from my friend Bob Nolan, who is sitting and visiting. But we have people who have been here over lunch. I learned things. I learned about the eyes yesterday on the English carriers as we were judging. You were looking at the eye itself. He was looking at the pupil and the iris and the inside of the interior of the eye of an English carrier. I never thought of that. But I learned from him yesterday because he's a man of the world. He knows these pigeons. He's got years and years of experience. One of the neat things that you need to do is be in the company of each other. You have somebody who you share this hobby with, but you also have somebody who knows more than you. Spend time with them. In my own lifetime, I had a mentor. His name was Paul McNorgan. I also had a very good friend. His name was Harry Alexander. The two of us as boys raised these pigeons, and every minute we talked about these birds. When we were together, we were inseparable. We talked about pigeons, 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 pigeons until it got dark, and late into the night, we still talk about pigeons. And then we had access to these people who had many, many years of raising them. And so again and again and again, we would learn something from them by just being in their company, going to see their birds, see how their nesting materials were. What did they feed their birds? What did they say about the most important things they needed to learn about their pigeons? And we still do that today. Mr. Nolan and I, at 70-some years old, we're learning things from each other each day. We're traveling here, it's like, oh wow, we make observations. He sees something I don't, I see something he doesn't, and we converse. It's like, then we're both better because of it. Our birds are better, our experience is better. But we share the company of good people in this hobby that is so special. And you have people from all over the world. Look at us. Where do you come from? You come from India. I come from California. He comes from Jordan. We have gentlemen from Oman and Bahrain. We are here from all, you guys have people from Bangladesh who showed yesterday. You know, I've sent birds to Pakistan maybe 10 or 12 years ago. I know those birds are in your hands now, or the offspring of them. But here we are sharing this hobby. It's so special. You know, the people are special, the birds are special, being in each other's company, the time we share with each other is so special. And treasure that, treasure it. You can't replace that anywhere else in the world. You can't. And I know guys who build cars, who raise chickens, who raise other kinds of animals. But the idea that we are in each other's company from all over the world, and we sat in a hot place yesterday, and we looked at pigeons for 2 solid days, and we got opinions and opinions and opinions, and that's what we did. But we're together here. You have your pigeon, I have my pigeon, we talk, we visit, we share. And the wonderful thing is that we come together with this beautiful hobby, and the friendship, and all of that beautiful things happen. I know that you have more to do than have listened to me, but I bring Jacobins with me. I bring 50 years more experience with Jacobins. Bob Nolan brings 50 years or more experience with him with English trumpeters. I know my friend Nasser brings 1,000 years worth of English carriers. You know, and you have long-faced clean-legged tumbers, maybe not 50 years yet, but you've got access to all of those people, you know, that brought you here. And Zuhair, you've been all over the world. You've seen people from every continent of the world.
Lucky man.
Lucky travel man. And the reason we're here is because he invited us to come and be judges at your show. And so here we are, you know, but I get to be in your company. Look at the photographs we took with each other on Saturday. I mean, come on, you guys. That was, I've never seen anything like that before. You know, we're just taking pictures of each other to say, hey, I was here. I was here. I got to be a part of this. How special. You have something to say. I know you do.
Thank you, Professor Drew Lobenstein. Thank you.